I'm Doug Aguilera, CPA and the chair of the Enforcement Advisory Committee. Welcome. The CBA has, provided the opportunity for the public to participate via the WebEx platform. When we take public comments, we will begin by taking public comment from those individuals attending the meeting at the California Board of Accountancy headquarters. I will then ask the moderator to open up the lines for public comment. You will be allotted up to 5 minutes for public comment. I would now like to turn the meeting over to Ms. Acosta to establish a quorum.
Mr. Aguilera?
Here.
Mr. Cowley?
Here.
Ms. Kathy Johnson? Here. Mr. Mike Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Russell?
Here.
Mr. Tegmeyer?
Here.
Ms. Siegler? Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Acosta. The CBA's mission is to protect consumers by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with established professional standards. This mission is derived from the statutory requirement that protection of the public shall be the highest priority for the California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. And with that, we'll move on to item number 2 in our agenda. Number 1, public comments for items not on the agenda. Do we have any public comments for items that are not on the agenda? No one here in the room. Moderator, can you open it up to the public?
This is the moderator. I'm opening up the Q&A. Give me just a moment. I thought I heard myself echo. I'm going to mute the line for just a moment. Okay, so this is the moderator. I've opened up the Q&A. Members of the public, if you would like to participate, the instructions are on the screen for your reference. Just simply click the question mark inside of a square at the bottom right corner of your WebEx screen and type, I would like to make a comment in the ask field, in the text field, and send it to all panelists. And this is the moderator. I've sent a request to unmute your line again. I hear no echo now, so that's good. I have no requests being submitted. There are, from my knowledge, no public attendees present. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 2A. Number 2 is the report of the committee chair. 2A is approval of the February 3rd, 2022 Enforcement Advisory Committee minutes. Does any member wish to make a motion to approve those minutes? Kathy, thank you. Ms. Johnson for making the motion. And then Ms. Ziegler, you are seconding it?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from our members? I will now open it up to the public. Assuming that there are no more members from the public or there are still no members from the public, I am going to move on without asking for any public comment. Ms. Costa, please take roll.
Mr. Aguilera,
Approved.
Mr. Cowley,
Approved.
Ms. Kathy Johnson, approved. Mr. Mike Johnson,
Approved.
Mr. Russell,
Approved.
Mr. Tegmeyer,
Approved.
Ms. Ziegler.
Approve.
The motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Acosta. Item 2B of our agenda is a resolution for retiring Enforcement Committee member, Jose Palma, and a dear friend and a valuable member of this committee. And I'd like to read this resolution into the record. Whereas Jose Palma, CPA, has faithfully served as a member of the California Board of Accountancy Enforcement Advisory Committee from May 17th, 2018 through May 31st, 2022. And whereas he serves as a member of the Qualifications Committee, and whereas throughout his term of service, at all times, Jose Palma, CPA, gave fully of himself and his ideas and acted forthrightly and conscientiously, always with the public interest and welfare in mind. And whereas he has discharged these important responsibilities in a manner reflecting great credit upon himself and the accounting profession, and whereas his colleagues wish to express him their high esteem and regard, now therefore be it resolved that the members of the California Board of Accountancy express heartfelt appreciation to Jose Palma, CPA, for the outstanding contribution he made during his term of service on the Enforcement Advisory Committee and to the consumers of California. And this resolution was signed by the CPA President, Michael Savoy, as well as the CPA Vice President, Ms. Salazar, who we are lucky to have with us today. Item 2C, discussion and possible action to approve proposed 2023 Enforcement Advisory Committee meeting dates. Does anyone wish to make a motion to accept the proposed 2023 Enforcement Advisory Committee meeting dates?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Are there any questions or comments from our members? I will now open it up to public comment. Ms. Moderator, can you now open this up to the public for comment?
Yes, this is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. And a friendly reminder for any of the committee members who have their mics open, if you can please mute them just to avoid that echoing. Thank you. And the instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you would like to participate in the Q&A, click on the question mark instead of a square and type "I would like to make a comment" in the ask field in the text field and send it to all panelists. No requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Acosta, will you please take roll?
Mr. Aguilera,
Approved.
Mr. Cowley,
Approved.
Ms. Kathy Johnson, approved. Mr. Mike Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Russell,
Yes.
Mr. Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Ziegler. Yes. The motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Acosta. Moving on, and by the way, it is nice that we have these dates scheduled out for now 18 months. And so my recommendation to the folks that are here, I'm preaching to the choir, I know. Maybe I should be saying this to the people who are not here, but in any case, please put this on your calendar, put these dates on your calendar, and hold them as tightly as possible. And that's one of the things that I know that we talked to our proposed new members about, is the need to attend every meeting. And it can be hard, and there are exceptions, we understand. So please get these down on your calendar and hold them tight. Thanks. The next item on our agenda is number 3, the report of the California Board of Accountancy. And Ms. Salazar is here with us today. Ms. Salazar is one of my favorite board members and very active. And thank you for being here today.
I would like you to introduce me everywhere that I go, please. So thank you very much for allowing me to come here. I'm not your regular liaison, but as a local in Sacramento, I'm always happy to come and meet with our volunteers. So before I start the report, I would like to just say thank you. I know your chair has talked a little bit about the importance of your participation, but as a board member, I just want to say what you are doing to assist our board is critical. I appreciate your diligence with making sure there's a quorum here, and I just want to make sure you feel appreciated, because sometimes being a volunteer isn't always a ton of fun. The travel isn't always easy, and I just want to say thank you for making the time in your calendar to be here. It's really important to our profession and to our consumers in California that you are helping our board with their regulatory process. So with that, I will say it's an exciting time to be in accounting. There's a lot happening. And I am pleased to report on 2 Board of Accountancy meetings. And so the first one in March, I will say, was our first meeting back in person, which was really exciting for us. And we knocked out an awful lot of work. Just as this committee has scheduled its calendar out, our Board of Accountancy has already approved its 2023 calendar. So you may want to mark it and participate and listen in where you are able to. The Board of Accountancy has also adopted its current strategic plan. So that runs from 22 through 24, and that plan is available on our board's website. One of the presentations at this March meeting was from John Johnson of NASBA, the National Association of State Board of Accountancy. He is their Director of Legislative and Governmental Affairs. So there is an update on record, if you weren't able to listen in, about NASBA's activity regarding CPA evolution, exam candidate pipeline. Again, that's making sure that there are enough candidates to serve our consumers, and the Alliance for Responsible Professional Licensing, as well as cryptocurrency. So all of those issues continue to be important with the Board of Accountancy and the profession nationally. There was an approval at this meeting for regulatory text, and staff were directed to initiate a rulemaking process to eliminate the second signature requirement on the certificates of general and attest experience forms, and also consolidate everything into one form. So the feedback has generally been that getting 2 signatures was burdensome. There was a lot of feedback, but ultimately it was determined that it wasn't critical. So those changes will be coming. So watch for it. Just as a reminder, the regulatory process takes a while. So although we've taken action, it is not in effect. So watch those effective dates and look for those forms to change as you sign the forms for your candidates that you're working with. There was also an approval for an updated regulatory text amending continuing education provisions regarding blended and nano learning. So there were some pieces that were helping it become a little bit more consistent with the national approaches, and there were some edits. So also look for that. So nano and blended are in progress, and so watch for those regulatory changes, and the board, of course, will be doing announcements when those are finalized and rolled out. At the May meeting, staff provided an update and demonstration of kind of an exciting new movement for the Board of Accountancy. We have a Cba Connect application. So if you haven't seen it, it is online. and it allows CPAs in our state to renew their license online, including paying renewal fees and uploading continuing education information. So I will say, you can actually set up your account now, even if you don't renew until later in the year. So I would encourage our committee members to check that out. Go ahead and get it set up. If you have any questions or concerns, of course, give the feedback to the staff. I'm sure they would love it, but the demonstration was great. So I would encourage you to do that and also share it with the CPAs that you are working with. The board also approved modified regulatory text regarding the definition of satisfactory evidence of education. So this addressed the Office of Administrative Law's concerns and clarified that transcripts from educational institutions could be sent by applicants, but the transcripts must be in an envelope that was sealed by the educational institution. And the modified text also stated that transcripts could be sent electronically to the Board of Accountancy directly from the educational institution. So I don't believe it was a substantive change, but it was clarifying. And so that process is now moving forward with the revised text. As you may have noted, it was also in May legislative season, so the Board of Accountancy reviewed quite a few legislative positions and did take some stances on individual legislation. So if you have an interest in those, that information is, of course, available on the Board of Accountancy website. So with that, I think that wraps up the most exciting general board business, and our next meeting is later this month, and it will be here in person July 21st and 22nd. So we look forward to continuing the board business, and your liaison will of course bring you an update as well after your next meeting. So with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Salazar. Are there any questions for Ms. Salazar?
On the Nano, you said there's an update on that. What was that again? Nano learning? What does that refer to?
So Nano learning, staff, please correct me if I'm wrong, is CE, continuing education, in 1/5 hour increments. So in Katrina's brain, these are like 10 to 20 minute courses, if my math is right. So these are short courses, and they are reflective of being able to break topics down into little segments and take smaller chunks of content. So I guess that is maybe my explanation for it.
Just a new accepted format of CPE. Oh, wait, you said CE, well, CPE,
continuing,
yeah.
CPE, continuing education, yeah. So it will allow it. Currently, we do not accept it. Nationally, there are quite a few states that have already accepted it. It was part of the recommendation of I believe it was the UAA committees. Oh, I take that back. I'm sorry. The CPE Standards Working Group, I believe, approved those recommendations, and then it bubbles up through NASBA and AICPA and is jointly adopted, I believe. Help, please.
So you're correct. They're a joint adoption of some CPE standards that create models for both the provider. They're primarily provider driven and how providers will develop CE, but it includes, information that boards of accountancy can then adopt for purposes of how something might qualify for CE.
Yeah. And I actually sat on an AICPA committee, it was actually about 5 years ago, where people were asking for the opportunity to earn CPE in smaller bits. Instead of an 8-hour course, we may have an hour throughout the day to earn a little bit of CPE for some specialized learning versus it just checking off a box. If there's a topic that we really feel like we can get some expertise on, and we don't have 8 hours and we've got an hour, and we're not just checking off a box that we've, done some CPE, it's actually relevant to our current field of practice. And so I'm actually looking forward to it. I love it.
Yeah. No, it should be interesting. And everybody's going to short format media now, so it seems like it's consistent with that.
Do we know if any other DCA boards are doing this?
I don't have the exact number. I believe there are 14 boards that have not adopted either Nano or blended or in the process. Currently, the issue is that there isn't a large supply of Nano. My understanding is there isn't a large supply of Nano courses because there isn't more widespread adoption. So it will be interesting to watch. It has been embraced and by a lot of boards already. But what I would say is the feedback that I've heard from practitioners who are in states that have had that opportunity is that the staff really enjoy it. It allows them to get, just as Ms. Johnson said, a very specific look at a very specific topic that they may be dealing with. So again, the testing, it has all the elements of an hour course. There still has to be that reinforcement and the examination at the end and the certificate. So it seems very popular with a segment of our licensees, or maybe not California licensees, but licensees in states where it's available. But the big issue is, I think, just the supply, which the market may provide more, should there be more.
Yeah. And also with the younger generation, there's lots of studies about the attention span. And so we really want the CPE to be relevant and not them just tuning out. And so that's another driver of Nano based on our studies. Anyway, I'm not a professor, so I know there is some truth to that.
Thank you.
Speaking of younger generation, I'm, along with Ms. Johnson and recently Ms. Ziegler, members of the Forensic Services section, the Cal CPA. And in that meeting, and then in my meeting yesterday with the Peninsula Silicon Valley chapter, we're talking about how do we fill the pipeline with more potential and actual new CPAs. And then it's my recollection that the board talked about this, and maybe there's going to be a task force or a subcommittee. I can't quite remember. Is that something that was discussed by the board?
So I would say the board continues to hear reports on pipeline and continues to monitor the number of candidates that are applying within our state. There are reports that track the inflow of candidates, the number of licensees, how quickly they're processed. But I don't recall a task force specifically being set up. I do know at a national level, because it is of national importance that there are enough licensees to serve consumers, that there are quite a few task forces nationally. So NASBA is actively working with the AICPA on a pipeline project. So I believe it is happening more at that level. And the part of that reason is that the board's role comes after the candidates have completed the education and examination requirements, and then they're already through that portion of the pipeline. And so the various parties to the process are dealing with their pieces as well. So it is of importance, but maybe less of a board role, because the folks have made it through the pipeline when we do get to license them. So.
Thank you. And now, Ms. Moderator, can you help us and open it up to public comment?
This is the moderator. I'm opening up the Q&A. Just a friendly reminder, if you have your mic unmuted, to please mute it to avoid this echoing. Thank you so much. The instructions are on the screen for your reference, members of the public. If you would like to participate, click on the question mark inside of a square, typically located at the bottom right corner of your WebEx screen. And in the text field, type "I would like to make a comment" and make sure you send that to all panelists. No requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you. And Mrs. Salazar, I'll turn it back over to you again.
Okay, and I just would like to add a clarifying comment. I kind of shifted focus to the national projects that are happening, but I would really be remiss if I didn't call out the great work our staff is doing. So apologies. But in terms of pipeline in California, things like the Connect application that allow candidates to apply online, keeping the processing time low, are things our Board of Accountancy is actively doing and our staff are doing. We're also holding events to help educate and reach out to students and candidates throughout the year. We do have board members go speak to groups as well. So there's an outreach function that happens with board members as well as the staff. And so I would share that with you as well. So within our little corner of the pipeline, I feel like I should say our board is actively engaged with trying to reduce those barriers and facilitate the licensing process for our candidates within our state. But that really just complements sort of all the rest of it that needs to happen. Thank you.
Yeah, I could echo that. I really appreciate the board. I've attended several of those outreach events with the students, and they are extremely helpful. Hearing answers to their questions that actually answers their questions instead of saying, "I think this is what you need to do." So those outreach meetings have been awesome.
Thank you for that amplification, Ms. Salazar, and thank you again for being here today. We now turn to section 4 of our agenda, which is the report of the enforcement chief. Mr. Franzella, I will turn the meeting over for you to go through items 4A and B.
Thank you. Good morning, members. So first off, we want to give you a heads up in the materials that are before you today. Staff replaced out the Enforcement Advisory Committee, or the Enforcement Activity Report that was mailed initially. I think that showed as of March 31st and was of 9 months worth of data. We have since mailed out to the board members for their meeting for July, the current Enforcement Activity Report that's in here. So we quickly pulled it together, got it relabeled, and put it out for members to have. So that's the one I'll be walking through, is the one in your yellow, that was in your yellow folders. So it will be as of May 31st, 2022, and be for the 11 months worth of fiscal data of 21-22. So before jumping into the report itself, I just wanted to highlight the report went through some changes, some format changes since the last time it was provided to the EAC, and it was made to improve the usability of the report. Some tables and graphs have been removed, others have been simplified, and while the overall length of the report has been reduced, key enforcement data has been retained and hopefully made easier to review. So beginning first with complaints received, the CBA has received over 3,300 complaints for those 11 months. I will also give you a heads up that I believe after discussions with my team yesterday, we're pulling the year-end stats, and it's, I want to say, over 4,200, give or take, that will end the fiscal year with. So the 3,300 is definitely not the end, even capping out the year at this particular point. So the new graph on the bottom of page 1 provides a comparison of the total of complaints received as of the same 11-month reporting period for the prior 2 fiscal years. It includes both a graph comparison of the internal and external complaints. You'll see.
Franzella, can I stop you just for a second?
Yes, please.
This is what I have in my packet, and I'm wondering if this is the same thing that you're reviewing.
So just to make sure, everybody, I believe it was replaced in your yellow folder and should say as of May 31st, 2022. Is it in? Okay. We'll take one, just give us 1 second and we'll make sure to replace them out.
We're listening to you. We're paying attention.
I just want to make sure we're all on this. So does everybody have the May 31st? Okay. Can you get Ms. Salazar a copy, please? Okay, so are you good, Mr. Aguilera? Good, okay. So let's see. So again, on this report, it shows we had over 3,300 complaints. We have a new graph at the bottom that compares the same reporting period for those 3 fiscal years, the current year and the 2 prior fiscal years. Members will see that when we compare the prior fiscal year, the board had experienced about a 32% increase in the total number of cases for the same 11-month period for 2021, and specifically in the area of external complaints, an over 60% increase in the number of external complaints when you compare to the prior year. And then on the following page, which is the complaints received, this used to be a pie chart that broke down almost every type of complaint. Obviously that it had its purpose at one particular time, but it stopped being as valuable anymore as we started to have to carve out and lump things together. So we have now moved to a top 3 complaints for comparison purposes of the prior fiscal year, including the total number of percentage that particular complaint makes up of the totality of our complaints, not of the 3 you see there, but of the totality of the complaints we actually received.
Dominic, sorry, pardon me. How easy is it to file a complaint? What's the process like if the public wants to do that?
So we want to make it as easy as possible. So it is a fairly streamlined process. A couple of things. We used to have 2 types of complaint options. One which was a pretty not lengthy, but a lengthier type of form. You could go through and fill out the complaint, and you did it online, and it sent an email to us along with any information. And we had a more truncated version of that for unlicensed activity, where somebody could present something or provide something pretty short, because maybe they were on license lookup looking for an individual, didn't see them. There was a way to click and say, well, I want to report potential unlicensed activity without having to fill out this very lengthy report. And so it was a much smaller version. I want to say at the end of May, we launched within that same kind of Connect that's used for renewals, that system. We now have a new online complaint tool that allows individuals to basically complete the same forms in various ways, but actually upload documents rather than just submit an email to us, and then we would have to make contact and secure documents. So it allows us to kind of get that information quicker from them. But it's simple. You just go online. There's a link under consumers, complain about a licensee, and you fill out the information and we take a look at it.
Okay. Yeah, and you said the change was in May. I was wondering if maybe there was a change in the method for filing a complaint. Is that what drove the increase in the external? But
not really. I would say the methodology changed, but not necessarily the simplicity of it. They've both been fairly simple. The methodology for us is it's easier to track a little bit, but the big thing that staff got out of it, and hopefully will help the board, but also individuals, is they can upload documents concurrently without the board having to kind of go out there getting information, slowing down processes. We can get it kind of as a package rather than another round.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I was also wondering if, I don't know, the COVID era pandemic, had anything to do with people having, working from home more, having more time to report inactivity. I don't know if you have any sense of.
So I'll touch on it a little bit later, but I'll bring it forward now. A lot of it, if you see, was unlicensed activity. Around 1,400 cases of the 3,300 that we have was unlicensed activity. 90+%, I want to say, are from one individual on a very specific issue.
Okay.
And so again, we're still going to be above the numbers without her complaints to some extent than we would have been in prior years. Her numbers just take it to another level at this particular point.
At the end of Mr. Franzella's report, I will ask for comments. And so for now, let's let him get through his presentation.
So moving on to investigations and investigations pending, looking first to page 3. As of June 30th, staff had closed just over 2,800 cases with 98% being within 1 year. The average days to close investigation sits at 95, which is a slight decrease from the information reported to the board back in at the May meeting for the March time period. We currently have an inventory of just over 1,300 cases. Obviously, that's a significantly higher number when compared to the prior 2 fiscal years, and is obviously a direct correlation of the significant number of additional cases we have this year. There are 2 cases over 24 months, and they're both being actively investigated. So that number is, I think, might be the lowest we've had at this particular point. We've never been at 0, I don't think, but we've been as high as about 175 at one particular point. So being down to 2 is a good place to be, and shows a lot of hard work primarily on the part of the ICPAs, because these tend to be the very technical cases. So Paul and his team have done an excellent job of trying to control that particular inventory. And then members will see the average of our open cases is at 72 days. Moving on to discipline, which is page 4 of the report. Looking first to the AG referrals, the CBA has referred 29 matters to the AG's office and filed 21 pleadings, with the vast majority of those pleadings being accusations. The CBA has also taken, the CBA has 33 matters pending at the AG's office, and has taken action on 31 disciplinary orders, with the vast majority of those being stipulated settlements. Looking to citation and fine, which is on page 5, the CBA has issued 432 citations through those 11 months, with 70% of those citations being for the yearly minimum CE requirement, the 20 and 12, commonly known as the 20 and 12 CE. We've received 69 citation and fine appeals and have withdrawn 47 of those citations. And generally, that's the result of the licensee either provided new or mitigating evidence that we didn't have at that particular time when we issued the citation, or in some instances complied with what the issue was, and staff have decided to withdraw the citation. We have upheld 15 of those citations. As for the next page, which is on page 6, which is unlicensed activity, already for this fiscal year, we have over 1,400 cases regarding unlicensed activity. So when you compare that to the prior fiscal years, which represent full fiscal years, for those 2 columns, we've seen over a 900% increase when compared to 1920, and an almost 210% increase when compared to last fiscal year. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the vast majority, so over 90% of the complaints in this unlicensed, are from one individual, which involve individuals that do not have an active CPA license issued in California, holding out a CPA on a specific social media platform. Of the unlicensed activity investigations, we've closed 678, and with over 650, the result of the individual obtaining compliance, or we've identified compliance with any issues. So the final area is the probation area, which is on pages 14 and I believe it's on page 14. page 14. As of June 30th, we had 120 individuals on probation. We've identified 66 probation violations, with the vast majority being cost reimbursement and quarterly written reports. And so at this time, I'll turn it back over to the chair, and I'll do my best to answer members' questions.
Are there any comments or questions from the committee?
Yes. Mr. Franzella, I noticed that the complaints in 2 years have gone up 80%, and there's a 7-fold increase in investigations pending. And I know a lot of them are the one person. Do you have enough staff currently to tackle all these?
I believe we're well positioned to manage the workload at this time, but it's something we always look at.
Thanks.
On page 3, at the bottom is the average age of open cases in days. And currently it's 72. I just want to note that that's a great statistic. In my prior role at Stanford University, I was graded on that statistic and I could never get to 72. So that's fantastic. Great work.
Thank you.
Dominic, wait, I got to ask, what are these cases? This 90% are coming from one person. You said, what are the nature of those?
Regrettably, I can't go into a lot of detail in a public environment on the specific nature of a particular case. But it is, again, related to individuals who are potentially holding out as a CPA on certain social media platforms, and whether or not they are in fact a CPA or even holding out. But regardless, that's the nature of the complaint. I can't go into any more specifics.
Okay, thank you.
Dominic, I have a question for fiscal year 21 and 22. There was a 22% increase in complaints regarding renewal deficiency. Of the renewal deficiency, any sense of if that's CPE related or CPAs just not having the funds to renew their license?
It could be any combination of things. We do track CE separately as a CE related issue, but there could be other issues related to a renewal that would result in it being referred over to us.
Okay.
I'd like to now open up the topic to the public for comment. Ms. Moderator, can you help us with that?
Yes, this is the moderator. Friendly reminder to please mute your microphones just to avoid that echoing. Thank you so much. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you would like to participate, click on the question mark inside of the square, which is typically located at the bottom right corner of your WebEx screen. And in the text field, type, "I would like to make a comment," and make sure that goes out to all panelists. Committee Chair, we have no requests being submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you. I'll now turn the agenda back over to Mr. Franzella for item 4B.
Thank you. So item 4B is a discussion regarding providing the Enforcement Advisory Committee providing input to the California Board of Accountancy's CPA experience requirements task force on the necessity of the attested experience requirement for CPA licensure. And I know it's a lot mouthful, so we just call them CERT. The CERT group is being tasked with evaluating the necessity and sufficiency of the attested experience requirement. And this was brought up back in November of 2021. Staff brought a series of policy issues that were coming up related to the general and the attest experience requirements and how that was playing out, both in terms of providing services, ownership of firms, reciprocal licenses, individuals who might be G licensee owners who now want to become attest licensees but really don't have an avenue to get there under the supervision requirements. So staff, working with the board, recommended that the board establish a task force to examine the attest experience requirement, and seeing if it's still necessary and sufficient to support the board's consumer protection mandate. So in November, the board elected to do so and establish CERT. And on page 2 of your materials on this, staff have highlighted what the board adopted as CERT charge, kind of their guiding question, as it were, related to performing its work on the attest experience requirement. And specifically, the CBA asked CERT to examine, is the present attest experience requirement necessary and sufficient to support the CBA mission to protect consumers by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with professional standards. And so a couple of things. First off, Ms. Salazar, who's here with us today, is the chair of CERT, and Ms. Johnson, who obviously serves on the EAC, is a member of the CERT task force. So they will be here to assist in maybe answering questions that any members may have on CERT. Staff also will do our best to try to answer questions along the way. But what's being asked of the EAC today is to provide input on the necessity, not the sufficiency, but the necessity of the attest experience requirement for CPA licensure, and based on EAC members' experience as it relates to your particular roles as member of the EAC, and again with a focus on the board's consumer protection mandate and its mission of consumer protection. Staff will collect any of this input. We're not seeking a motion per se. We're just collecting everybody's input. Because CERT has asked the various advisory committees, the qualifications committee, the peer review oversight committee, the EAC, to provide input on the necessity question. And so staff will collect that information today, and the chair will report to the CERT's next meeting, which will be in September, related to information gleaned from these discussions at the various advisory committees. So, so far, the CERT has met twice. They've met in March, and then they met again in May. Both meetings lasted, I think, over 3 hours individually each time, and have covered a lot of ground. But right now, CERT is really looking at that question and breaking it up and looking not both at necessity and sufficiency at the same time, but really focusing on the necessity. And if it is necessary, then they'll move to sufficiency and discuss, is it the 500 hours, is that good right now? Should it be different? Are the various items on the certificate of attest experience form appropriate? Do they need to be modified, expanded upon, those types of things? But we'll move to that after after CERT gets through the sufficiency. In your materials, staff did provide some high-level information on what CERT discussed and kind of covered both in the March and May meetings, provided links to the materials themselves, provided links to the webcast. If members haven't had a chance to kind of look at that or digest it all, I would suggest going back. They were very informative meetings and provide a lot of groundwork for kind of where we're headed and where CERT is headed at this particular point. So, again, at this particular point, we're just seeking members' individual input, trying to assess whether members believe it is necessary. I'm not asking if you actually agree or disagree, just trying to get input on what you believe the attest experience requirement and how it supports the board's consumer protection mission. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair and allow him to lead discussion. And staff will be taking notes. And like I said, Ms. Johnson and Ms. Salazar are here to hopefully answer some questions related to CERT. Staff will fill in some gap as well if necessary.
And at this point, I'm just going to open it up for comments. related to the necessity of continuing to require applicants seeking to sign reports on attest engagements that they complete an attest experience requirement.
Okay, Kathy or Katrina, could I trouble you just to start the conversation? Could we have a brief overview of how many other states are doing a dual track, and do other states have a special attest requirement with for CPE? Just to kind of frame the conversation.
I'll take that, Mr. Aguilar. So right now, California, I believe, is one of only 2, maybe 3, that have some type of a test experience requirement. I want to say Iowa and Guam have some attest experience requirement. I don't know if it's similar to the Board of Accountancies, but they have some type of a test. Otherwise, the vast majority of the states follow what's considered the Uniform Accountancy Act of 1 year of general accounting experience. Some of those take it a step further in terms of instead of 1 year, they require some number of hours, maybe require 2 years. Maybe you get it faster than 2 years if you do attest, those types of things. But California really sits alone as having an attest kind of, not a 2-tier license, one license, but one that may have limitations versus if you get a license in, let's say, Arizona, completed the general experience requirement in a broad range of things or one specific area. As soon as you get that license, you're authorized to provide this full scope of work.
Given the historical, I guess, discrepancy, is there a reason historically California has pursued that path? Because just intuitively, it seems odd, and I only know California, it seems odd to magically be able to sign an attest report not having had a minimum level of attest experience, but just general experience.
So, and I will let Mr. Franzella speak to the history because the original license in California there was an audit requirement for all CPAs. So today we have 2 licenses. So I'll let him clarify that. But what I will say is, in response to that, national professional standards still require competence in order to sign an audit report. So it is absent the audit experience requirement, it is still incumbent upon that licensee to follow standards, do professional care, diligence. There's a lot of words from the UAA that I don't really remember, but that are really important that within our profession, the expectation is that work is being accepted that you are qualified for. So that there are standards that would be in place that should prevent someone from graduating, having no experience, getting their license, and then signing an attest report right off the bat. And Mr. Franzella, please expand on that if
Absolutely, thank you. So historically, most states did require some form of a test experience in order to get licensed. And then I want to say it was probably back in the mid-90s, the UAA task force, AICPA, NASBA had shifted that narrative to the test experience requirement being somewhat of a burden. And a lot of individuals weren't seeking to become CPAs to do attest level work. And the ability to get the attest experience requirement, again, being somewhat of a burden, shifted to this 1 year general accounting experience requirement concurrent with an increase in education. Rather than it just be the baccalaureate or maybe some other tracks that were available, they moved to the 150 1 year model. California, I want to say in 2000, as part of our what we go through every 4 years or so, is called a sunset review process. And California actually did present a model to move to the UAA, and that received considerable resistance. Not just from some within the accounting profession, but I believe the Department of Consumer Affairs, they're a public interest group called Center for Public Interest Law, and others who spoke pretty strongly about the removal of the attest experience requirement because attestation is the sole function of a CPA. Anybody else can do elements of accounting work, from tax work to consulting to manage financial planning, other areas, but attest was that kind of sole exclusive right to a CPA. So over time, a bridge was kind of met where, okay, we'll create this G path for these individuals, but you can't then perform these level of service for the attest. And still require the attest experience requirement. I want to say that took effect in around 2002 or 3 when we started issuing general licenses. Since that time, the vast majority, well, not the vast majority, it is now the vast majority, but over time it's crept up. The majority of people are getting general licenses over attest experience. But every time that it's been discussed, there's always been a decision by the board to maintain that attest experience requirement. And I think the last time that was 2015-16, when we had another task force kind of do similar issues. But under that time, we were looking at it from more of a, this could be problems for us, looking at some of those issues. And it was more a discussion because of the byproduct of mobility and the impact that meant. Now staff are presented with actual policy issues that we're trying to get some clarification on, because if we're going to keep the attest experience requirement, we need to create new guardrails under firm ownership and not maybe the ownership itself, but how it performs work within a firm that might be solely owned by G licensees and wanting to do attest work. Maybe some impact on peer review. What about those individuals who want to earn that experience but are at the top of their firm? And then reciprocal licenses and certain other factors. So now we have the kind of rubber meets the road after 20 years or so of having A and G. And, this is the opportunity to say, okay, we're going to keep a test. We need to create a new box. It needs to shift over here. But if you're getting rid of it, then what are you potentially replacing it with? How is that looking? And so on. So that's kind of the how we've kind of got to this particular point.
I feel really strongly that you do have to have these attest experience in order to provide or write or sign a audit report. While there are professional standards, including competence, I think that on behalf of the consumers of California, it's a good thing to have these guardrails in place with the 500 hours, and that the 500 hours specifically require specific audit steps so that we have licensees with the A license who are qualified to perform attest services. I think without this experience, it would be hard to be competent and be able to perform attest services.
I guess in a perfect world, we'd be able to, if it really mattered, other states that don't have attest requirement would have more audit failures, I would guess, right? If attest mattered, people were getting general experience signing audit reports and not doing a quality audit. It'd be interesting to just know. I don't know if we could ever know this, but are other states having more audit failures in California because they've dropped the attest requirement historically? Because I don't know, auditors are going to get experience. I think the market will demand it. You're not going to hire a firm that has very little experience, I guess, unless it's just a check the box, and audit isn't really a high quality or isn't a high priority anyway. Katrina, you made a really good point. The audit standards, when you sign a report, you do say, hey, we audited in accordance with these standards, and they all have quality requirements and supervision and due care and all that. So I think the California requirement might just be layering on top of that, perhaps unnecessary. So my input is I could see a pathway. I think this could be handled by the market, and experience is just part of doing an audit, and you have to comply with those standards that you're sending the report to.
Yeah, and I have to say my initial bias was, well, how could you do an audit without having audit experience after having served it as an auditor for 36 years? But I really hadn't put 2 and 2 together. As you said, the professional standards that everybody is held to, whether you're doing an AICPA audit or a PCAOB audit, whether you've had audit experience or not had audit experience, you could still comply or not comply with those standards. So just having been on an audit doesn't mean you're going to comply with the standards, but those professional standards, everything from risk assessment to controls to all that, that is an outline to do an audit. And you can't sign an audit opinion without ensuring that your entire team and that entire audit follow those professional standards. And what we found in a lot of our IHs is it was very clear that people didn't follow professional standards. So we've never asked how much audit experience they've had or whatnot. And I'm even thinking through the renewal process. So we're talking now about an initial applicant having that experience, but then after they get their CPA, they may or may not have continuing experience in a test, but still can sign the opinion if they follow the professional standards. So I guess in rethinking it, and as you said, if I don't know that we're any smarter than the other states, and if the other states are doing it and using the professional standards as the main framework, I now think it's a little less important.
I would like to add part of the conversations on the CERT committee was if we felt the need to still have the attest experience, was 500 hours enough? Also, are we confusing the public by having, as Dominique liked to say, it's not two different licenses. It's a level of experience, an A versus a G. Does the public really understand those differences, and are we confusing the public by having two different ones? So that was additional conversations that we've had during the committee. Just wanted to toss that out there.
I'd like to now open it up to public comment. Ms. Moderator, can you help us with that?
This is the moderator. I'm opening up the Q&A. The instructions are on the screen. If you would like to participate, click on the question mark inside of the square, typically located at the bottom right corner of your WebEx screen. And in the text field, type, I would like to make a public comment, and make sure you send that to all panelists. No requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you. The next item on our agenda is to conduct closed hearings. At this point, I would like to go into closed session and close this open portion of our hearing.